Right, this whole morning, Natasha Piri has been bringing us up to speed in terms of counting down to the State of the Nation 2020 this evening. Natasha, what's the latest?
Well, a very good morning to you. It's nearly 12 from the much anticipated State of the Nation address that will be delivered by President Cyril Ramaphosa. And of course, we have promised to give you rolling coverage of every State of the Nation address, and as part of that, we've got various voices and various leaders of political parties that we are actually currently speaking to. I'm now joined by the Reverend Dr. Kenneth Meshwe of the ACDP, and of course he'll just engage him on a number of factors, on a number of things, a number of issues. Thank you so much for Reverend. I mean, looking back at last year's State of the Nation address and looking at what has actually come to life, you know, has been made manifest by President Cyril Ramaphosa and his administration, could you say there are actually any positives that came out of last year?
Well, the negatives by far outweigh the positives. If you look at crime, it has not improved. You look at unemployment, is rising, is increasing. That is why one of the expectations we have is to hear what the president is going to reverse the rising unemployment in South Africa. We do not want unemployment to increase, but we want employment and job to increase, and that is unfortunately not happening. Crime in South Africa is out of control, and it is one of the contributory factors that investors would doubt to come in the country. As we know that there has been 2 investment summits, but on the ground you do not see the outcome in practical terms, in practical jobs that are created that comes out of that summit. We know that most investors are looking for public stability. There is no stability in South Africa, public or political stability, and they're also looking at policy certainty. Government is not clear on where they stand. On the issue of expropriation of land, you are getting conflicting messages. On the issue of using people's pensions, employees' pensions to bail out Eskom, you are getting conflicting messages. And obviously, as ACDP, we are totally opposed to government using the pensions of men and women who have worked very hard over the years to try and bail out Eskom. That is totally unacceptable for as long as the ACDP sees the future of this country.
I mean, staying on the issue of Eskom, I was just off air reading an article right now that just came through right now that says that, Eskom will start offering voluntary retrenchment packages to managers of care operations as well as employees over 60. Is this a way to actually relieve, Eskom of its woes, of its debts?
It's a small way of going in the right direction, because we have been hearing that Eskom is overemployed, that there are many people at Eskom now who should not be there, because when the politicians and the presidents were promising creation of job, they were just adding. So as a result, Eskom is overstaffed. So if they are giving voluntary packages, I think it's a step in the right direction. We must welcome that for as long as they promise. And we want to hear the president express himself. As long as we hear that our brothers and sisters who have been employed, teachers, nurses, and so on, that they are not going to lose their pensions, which would be very, very wrong and would be, I think, criminal.
Reverend Moshe, still on the issue, of I mean, there's so many troubles around, the power utility. They're struggling to keep the lights on. I mean, what is the way forward? Does the ACDP believe that Eskom should be privatized?
Well, definitely we agree that Eskom should be privatized. But the second thing that I think is important is to remind the Eskom board and government that around 2008, Eskom was the best power utility in the whole world. So if government was serious about solving the problem of load shedding, they should be asking the question, who was running Eskom that made them the best? So if they are serious, then they should say, once we know who they are, regardless of the color of their skin, we will employ them. I think government should put the issue of race aside. After 25 years, things are falling apart. They should say, South Africans, we need to start working together in order to build and rebuild what has been lost. So ESCOM, one of the solutions I believe is to bring in the best brains, the best expertise that is available in the country. Sometimes you hear them saying they are going to bring in international experts. Now, that I don't understand, because when they say they are going to bring in international experts, they are talking about white people who are somewhere in Europe or in America. They are not talking about black people. They are not talking about Africa. When they say international experts, they are talking about white people. So I'm saying, why use white people from Europe when you have white people in South Africa, particularly those who have established themselves and proven their ability by ensuring that ESCOM becomes one of actually the best in the whole world.
Last question before I go to my next guest. I mean, I know that education is also expected to be highlighted in the president's speech. You were quite vocal about the issue of education. You're now taking the Minister of Basic Education, Motshekga, to court over sex education.
Well, we wanted the minister to be reminded that individual teachers in South Africa have constitutional rights. You cannot just trample upon their rights and force them to work against their own consciences. All right? So the ACDP is definitely planning to do that. But as we are discussing this with the leadership of the ACDP, we see that maybe it's an empty threat. Let's not run to court now until we see her take a concrete move. If she does take a concrete move and we see her forcing and trying to retrench or even expel some teachers, then we'll go.
So you're no longer taking it to the courts?
No, we'll take it if her threats become real. Because now we are told, no, maybe she's just threatening, it's empty threats, okay? So once they become real, then we'll take the matter to court.
Okay, thank you so much. We'll catch up with you later. And of course, that was Reverend Kenneth Misho of the ACDP, just talking on a number of issues. Quite interestingly, so that he believes that ESCOM should be prioritized. And of course, over, threatening court action there against the Minister of Basic Education, Motshekga, I beg your pardon. He says that will actually be put aside for now. Mr. Sheikh, thank you so much for joining us on SABC News. We've heard from ACDP that he believes that ESCOM should be prioritized. As a National Freedom Party, do you share the same sentiments?
Not at all. I think let us be very, very clear. Politicians are there to find solutions in the country, and I think if you look at the challenges that all the state-owned entities are facing, is the result of interference by politicians. So if we change that, all state-owned entities, if function, if operated like a business, will be successful with interference from politicians and political parties. If you take ESCOM, when you get in, let me give you a good example. Take all the structures of government. When you buy a motor vehicle, for 5 years later it's going to reach its lifespan, you must build another one or buy another one. Why don't we do that with ESCOM? We knew 50 years ago that this has got a lifespan, but we did very little or nothing about it. Then was the issue of your skills. Then is corruption and interference. You've got evergreen contracts that are running for 30 and 40 years. You can see what is unfolding through the Zondo Commission at the moment. Take all that away. And if you put proper management in there, and remember, we are conflicted even as members of parliament because we are appointing these boards. And every time you appoint a board, it's exactly the same members of those boards who are not and being charged for corruption and maladministration and things. So again, all these state-owned entities, including South African Airways and things, can be very successful entities. If you take Ethiopian Airlines, it's wholly owned by Ethiopia, the country itself, but it's in the private sector that handles it, that manages, and it's very successful. Why can't the same thing apply here? If you take South African, I'll give you one added example. The entire government, every official at every structure will use every other airline besides South African Airways. And yet you want South African Airways to be successful. If you phone SAA now, 1 in 3 people are not at work, you're expecting it to be successful. You're paying 22 rand for a bottle of water, you're expecting it to be successful. I think we need to get our house in order. Politicians that are interfering in state-owned entities, that is the cause of where we are today.
Mr. Imam, you raise a quite interesting point talking about management of all these state-owned enterprises. Last year, in 2019, State of the Nation address, the president has actually spoken to these issues, saying that the right people need to be appointed to these management positions, the right people who have got the ability and the will to actually turn things around. He also mentioned the issue of consequence management, but it seems to be the exact opposite of that.
I've been hearing this for the last 6 years that I'm here. But there is no such a thing as consequent management in the vocabulary of government, and that is the greatest problem we have. We have some of the best systems and mechanisms in place. What we fail is implementation, and the second thing is consequence management. Now let me go and add to this. You are losing an approximately 240 billion rand a year in this country. We are concentrating on the Zondo Commission and state capture. When you talk about supply chain processes, we are losing approximately 240 billion because an item that costs 1 rand, you're paying 104. Why are we not equally doing something about that side by side while we're dealing with the Zondo Commission and wanting to the perpetrators to be brought on book? Why don't we stop this corruption? Have the will and the to want to do something about it. Year in and year out, we hear the same thing. We're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do that. Tell me how many times people in the different government structures have been removed for non-compliance or for fraud or corruption.
But who holds these people accountable? They should be held accountable.
Well, let me tell you, we have many oversight committees, and we go on oversight. We identify the problem, we come back and we report, and that's where it stops. Even the amendment to the Auditor General, even there, the General's hands are still tied. He can only do so much. So until we are very serious about dealing with in terms of consequence management and ensuring we only employ the persons that are best able to do the job, not because of the party you belong to or the friendship you have, we will continue the same way.
Some from you is that it's time that President Cyril Ramaphosa's administration be decisive, actually take action. I mean, last year we got the sentiments that he was cracking the whip on corruption, appointing, Shamila Batoyi. South Africans had expected more arrests to actually happen. South Africans by now would have expected that coming out of the Zondo Commission, more arrests would have happened, but it seems as if nothing has happened so far.
Well, the National Freedom Party is not convinced. What we heard President Ramaphosa say previously and many others before him, when it comes to action, it is not there. And clearly, let me tell you, like I said just now, in terms of the corruption, you are concentrating and all the focus is on Zondo Commission and there. And I heard yesterday the figure is about 1 trillion rand. That is yet. We are losing 40 billion rand currently. Why don't we at least stop that? We're not interested. So whether we are serious about fighting corruption and stopping it and taking the country forward is something else. I really don't believe that we are sincere about it.
What other areas do you think that the president should actually focus on?
Well, job creation, the president, and I cannot understand this, repeatedly he said in the last that he's going to create 2 million jobs in 10 years. And I said to him, but President, you want to create 2 million, but there's 5 million people going to be entering the job market because there's at least 500,000. President now 2 days ago announces that he's going to create 275,000 jobs. But there's 500,000 people entering the job market. Over and above, there's 10 million people unemployed in South Africa. So are we really serious? Let's take the manufacturing industry. Your leather industry has come to a shutdown. Your textile industry has come to, your plastic industry has come down. Everything is important to South Africa. Then you have the high cost of doing business in South Africa. You need to sit down with the unions. There needs to be a balance. Otherwise, the high unemployment rate is going to continue. You talk about the education, the quality of basic, you're dropping the standard because you want the numbers to increase. And what is happening? Look at the amount of money you're spending in higher education. In the first year, there's a 60% dropout. So is that money not going to waste? Should it not be those that have the capacity to go to university and be able to take the country forward? It is not happening. We've repeatedly called on the department, monitoring and evaluation, the minister's offices, to look into the TVET colleges. The throughput rate in the TVET colleges is 1 in 10. And we said, are you speaking to the one hand, you have an abundance of skills. On the other hand, you have a shortage. Why is it not speaking to each other? So really, what the other thing that we find, there's a major gap between politicians at all spheres of government, be a councillor from the legislature and parliament, and the people on the ground. Nobody is willing to go to the people and see the lives and how around us suffer.
Whilst talking on that issue, do you not think then that the district development model will actually help?
Well, let me tell you, it is the National Freedom Party that have repeatedly been calling for scrapping the 3-tier government. We feel it's a waste of taxpayers' money. The provincial governments are of no value. We said have a 2-tier government, have a national and have a district level. If you do that and the district all the municipal, because a lot of what we're doing is all duplicated and you're paying people for doing nothing. National government goes and does oversight. Provincial government is supposed to be doing the oversight. District is supposed to be doing the oversight. You got monitoring and evaluation doing it. So many structures trying to ensure that one person does, a man or woman does their job. But what we're finding, even they are still not doing that and we're still not achieving anything. So I think we need a relook whether we need the three-tier government in this country. As the National Front, we honestly believe that we don't need to put the citizens of this country first. And let me tell you again, there is no such a thing as South Africa does not have the resources. We have the resources to bring changes to the lives of our people. We are just not using it, managing it, and not using it in the appropriate manner. And that is the problem.
Thank you so much, and thanks for your time. Quite strong views there coming from NFP, Mr. Sheikh Imam, saying that, 3 tiers of government should be abolished. It rather should be 2, rather national and municipal, and saying there that ESCOM should not be privatized, like Dr. Kenneth Mishwe of the ACDP believes so. But of course, we will give you more and more voices coming through from various political parties. Back to you, Desiree.
Thank you so much, Natasha. I guess we have a date with the president tonight?
Yeah, 7 o'clock when the president addresses the National Assembly as well as the National Council of Provinces. It's a joint sitting.
We'll be watching along with you. Bye-bye.
All right, take care.